Hello, mystical souls, and welcome. I am so glad that you're here today. We are going to do a review of the Good Karma Tarot, and since I don't like long introductions when I watch videos, we are just going to get right to the chase. So, this, as a beginner, is the first tarot deck that I picked up. I am kind of relearning tarot after about 25 years. And creating this video is just kind of a good way for me to teach myself and learn visually, audibly, but also share some information and insight with the world. So hopefully I allow you to learn something as well along with me. So the Good Karma Tarot deck I kind of picked up hastily at Barnes & Noble. I wanted a deck quickly so that I could begin learning from and practicing with. And this one spoke to me as I was there out of everything else that was there. And it also seemed to have some depictions from the original deck. In retrospect, and I'll get to it later, there are some reasons why I would caution against using this deck for beginners. So to start, let's kind of go over the elements and of the components of the set itself. So for starters, this is the packaging that the set comes in. It's just a standard kind of cardboard box, but it's, it's quality. It's strong, it's not flimsy. So if you're kind of into that sort of thing and you like that kind of packaging, that's a bonus for you. The artwork is good, it's nice and smooth, and it's strong. The inside here is just a plastic insert that the deck was kind of split between, and that's really all there was to it. Obviously I've been working with this deck, so it's no longer intact. It's not an unboxing, if you will, but yeah, the deck was separated into two parts, two halves, and then on top of that sat the book in there. So it all seeds in nicely together. And then the backing here, just a little overview of what the deck is about, and introducing Carrie Ward. She is obviously the writer, the creator of the content and the information in this deck and of the book. And then the illustrations, the artwork is by Amy Blackwell there. And I got this, like I said, at Barnes & Noble for $24.95, 25 bucks. But obviously you could find this elsewhere online, Amazon, other esoteric shops for probably much cheaper. And definitely utilize coupon codes because I have other decks coming in the mail that I was able to find a huge discount on, even cheaper than Amazon. So hunt around, you will find deals. Now, next, let's take a look at the book, the little white book that comes along with the set. This is actually really quality material. I was really impressed with this book. The outside feel of it has kind of a silky, matte, satiny finish to it. So I really like that. It's kind of, I don't want to say velvety, but it's just smooth and kind of silky-ish. The coloring, the illustrations are really vibrant and bright, and it mimics basically the illustrations and artwork on the box itself. So the same writing on the back, a little write-up of the writer, Carrie Ward. Going inside the book, again, the same, colorful, vibrant, engaging elements, artwork, color. It keeps your interest. It's not mundane. It's not boring to read. Just a lot of colorful portrayal and engaging writing. So there are sections in here broken down. Obviously, there's basic little intro, background, on tarot reading. Then there's a section in here that I personally have dog-eared for quick reference. goes into background of the major arcana, and then goes into each card of the major arcana, the 22. So each card depiction has the illustration itself. Then there's kind of like a little encapsulation of overall things to remember about the card, quick reference. Then it goes into overview of the card, and then the author has a little section here, what the card would mean if it represents a person. And then the last little paragraph portrays the kind of relation to the Rider-Waite deck and how this card relates to that, and how that card is usually portrayed. And then lastly, on each page, there is what the author calls a good karma tip, which is kind of like a single liner word of advice that the card would be conveying to you. I find that if this card was a person sections are actually really cool. Like for instance here with the Fool, if the Fool represents a person in your reading, it's likely to be someone younger or with a youthful outlook, possibly an air sign, perhaps an Aquarius. They may be influencing you to take a bold leap. Now, as a beginner, I could read this and think, wow, that's really insightful, but I have been recently doing some self-teaching through the Rider-Waite series, and with my my book written resources that I've been utilizing too that also portray the Rider-Waite. Some things in here I'm looking at a little objectively, I guess. For instance, possibly an air sign, perhaps an Aquarius. Well, we know that the Fool is very wistful and carefree and setting out on something new. There's an excitement and a freedom-loving air about this card. And in terms of air signs, the card as a whole definitely embodies the air element, but I myself would more so interpret this to be reminiscent of a Gemini, because Gemini is more like the baby air sign of the zodiac versus Aquarius, to me, more so comes across a little bit more mature out of all of the air signs, the adult air element, of the zodiac. So there are some things in there that, you can leave to personal interpretation and kind of alter with what you feel instinctually, intuitively, and your gut makes more sense. But that is kind of the general overview of the book and how it's laid out to portray the cards themselves. And then, of course, there's the next section that goes into the minor arcana. And again, just a little synopsis and background of that portion of the tarot deck. And then it breaks down yet again each of those cards in the same fashion as the major arcana, not as large of pictorial depictions of the cards themselves, mainly I think in this book to save space, because in the major arcana, each individual card is taking up 2 pages, whereas when you break into the minor arcana and you have 56 cards to break down, it would have taken up a lot of book space. So it's the same information though in these cards. She's still including synopses of if it represented a person and so forth. So cups, pentacles, wands, and swords all included in there. Once we get to the end of that, some little bonus extras within the back of the book, including how to work with the deck and doing readings, doing spreads, kind of a process, a suggestive process to go through with that. Just some little helps and tips and suggestions back there. And then some sample layouts, which generally in good little white books are generally included with most. And some how to kind of put pieces together, tell a story, the order and flow of things as you're doing readings for yourself or for others. And then this was an interesting section I saw in the book, and this may be kind of like a little spoiler alert. I don't know if you're not familiar with the deck, but She goes into kind of like talismans, and from what I gather, this is like, depending on how you're feeling, if you're having some struggling a little bit or having some issues with emotions, some things like anxiety or loss or feeling sad or confused or overwhelmed, the author depicts specific cards that maybe you could pull out and carry on your person to guard against or defend or assist you with those feelings and kind of overcoming them throughout the day. So I thought that was quite interesting. For instance, like here's one: if you're feeling ashamed, perhaps carry along the Queen of Cups with you, the Devil, Judgment. If you're feeling ashamed, for instance, and you carry the Devil card, that could be inspiration to break free of whatever you feel is causing that emotion and binding you. So I thought that was a cute little addition to the book, kind of unique. And then the last thing here is just credits and acknowledgments. And yeah, overall, good quality book. I was very impressed with this being in there. So if you're kind of keen on decks with good quality books, there's that for you. And now we will move on to the actual meat and potatoes, the deck itself. So talking about the integrity of the deck, it has a nice gloss to it. The backings are this yellow with some kind of like flower and petals there. And to try to portray the gloss, it is a pretty high gloss. They are slippery cards. Some may like that, some may not. I'm kind of neutral on it, I guess. As a beginner, for a beginner deck, I wasn't really too partial to the gloss of the deck itself, but they glide quite nicely. And the size isn't too bad. I mean, I think this is standard, maybe ever so slightly a touch smaller than standard, but not too bad to hold in the hand, and I have pretty small hands. The flex, the bend is, I think, pretty good to work with here. There's a nice little snap back to them. So if that's kind of your cup of tea in terms of the rigidity or the softness of the flex in the card, I think it actually feels pretty good, pretty neutral. It's not too stiff, manageable, and quite nice workably to handle. And so in terms of, I would like to talk about some pros and cons before we go into the specifics of the deck. And going back to the book, so I touched upon a lot of the pros that I thought with the book. Very vibrant, colorful. The depictions are, I think, really well done in terms of art and the literature. The one thing that I will say that the book is lacking on are in the literature itself, the author does not include reversed meanings, and maybe because of the overall general theme of the deck, good karma, they are shying away from some negativity or the adverse meanings in general, but that's one thing that is not included. Now, I will say, while you're learning as a beginner, if you reach a point where you have a good basic understanding of the general meanings of each card in their upright positions, it's quite simple to obviously be able to flip that and swap that out to give the contrasted meaning, the reverse meaning, intuitively on your own. That may not be a necessary element when you are working with this deck. So that was really my only qualm about the information and the literature inside the book itself. Other than that, the overall information, the color, the art, and the little extras in the back I thought were really good pros. Now, with the deck, obviously, we've already touched upon the high gloss, the flex. The artwork here is very vibrant, just beautiful color, beautiful illustration. A lot of thought, I think, went into this. The design is cool, it's modern, it's fresh, it's it's very happy and upbeat and very engaging and just fun. Like, you know, the cards are really colorful, and it's a diverse color. Even the illustrations themselves, the characters that are put inside the cards are incredibly diverse and I would say inclusive. A lot of people, I think in the reviews, have said that this is kind of a feminine deck, but I wouldn't totally agree with that. I mean, there are male depictions in here. There are neutral depictions as well. So the kings are of suits are depicted as men. There is kind of gender neutrality depicted in here as well, maybe non-binary. You know, so I think that it is a all around quite a diverse and modern, inclusive deck in terms of its portrayal. So with that, the con that I am going to go into, especially for beginners, would be by comparison of the Rider-Waite deck, the original. And the one thing that I would say that is lacking, which is going to come through with a lot of progressive, modern, maybe even indie decks, if you will, is the lack of the cutout of some of the essential intentional symbolism that is included in the Rider-Waite series. So for instance, we have the Fool here, and they still have the depiction of the mountains in the back, you know, which signifies struggles and hurdles to overcome, challenges, perhaps hardships in the future. But this more so has like a Dorothy, Wizard of Oz feel to it. It doesn't include the step off from the cliff, the treacherous cliff. The dog is just kind of hanging out in a basket versus the dog is jumping up at the Fool's heels and kind of as an alert to danger or warning. And I feel like this card doesn't portray the element of uncertainty and unknown like the original Rider-Waite does. This character also is not wearing that robe that has certain flowers on it, the hat, the feather. All of those little pieces of the puzzle are kind of missing here. And that is a common theme throughout this entire deck, which I feel as a beginner are really essential to learn when you're trying to get an overall universal grasp and good, solid foundational understanding of the meaning of the cards. So in that sense, I would not necessarily recommend this deck for a beginner, mainly because it's missing those things. I would wholeheartedly recommend starting out with the Rider-Waite, and I myself wish that I would have chosen a deck of that fashion over this, but I was hasty, and the artwork probably really drew me in, and the overall theme of good karma also drew me into this deck. It spoke to me in that sense. But as a beginner, I would say recommend to get that solid foundation. But after, this could be a great modern deck to segue into after gaining that initial grasp of those key intentional elements of the Rider-Waite deck. Especially for, you know, if you prefer more fun colors, fun pictures, but just know that this deck is not going to contain some of the essential elements. Another kind of, for instance here, this is a great example. The Emperor in the Rider-Waite deck is depicted on, you know, very rigid throne, structured, cold, hard surroundings, and in the background of his throne, there is a river running through, and that water element is crucial to symbolize that beneath all of that hard exterior, there is still intuition, feeling, emotion. There's a softness there that is kind of breaking and running through, that runs beneath, you know, that is at the core. And that is not at all depicted in the Emperor card of this deck. And I feel little things like that are so incredibly important. So, and you would not get that in any way, shape, or form, maybe from the blue, but even then, as a beginner, I really would not pick up on the blue symbolizing a river running through, whereas in the Rider-Waite, it's very obvious, it's very intentional, it just deliberately comes across in that manner, and I think that those key points are really, really important for a beginner to pick up, to really be able to put yourself in that card and understand what's going on a lot easier. So that is what I feel in terms of being a beginner overall with this deck, and maybe consider, you know, going a different avenue. Now, that's not to say that once you do have that understanding of the key points and the foundational aspects of the tarot deck and its meanings, that this deck still has so much to offer. I mean, the imagery is just simply beautiful and gorgeous, and a lot of work went into this. The artwork, the illustrations are, I think, still really well done. The color choices really complement one another. They harmonize and they blend well together. Overall, this deck clearly is meant to be portrayed in a positive, happy, joyous light, despite the meanings of some of the cards, the sorrow, the sadness, the hardship, but that's still, you know, that's a realistic part of life, and that is one of the essential points and meanings of the tarot deck, right, is the polarities, the dualities coming together in a neutrality and how they balance one another out, the complements of everything coming together. So you can't really escape that, you know, that's still just how it is, that's life, right? But even those things, like for instance the death card, are still kind of portrayed in an uplifting manner in this deck. Like the death card itself, the kind of overcast of black is minimized, and it's actually more of a green here. And instead of just portraying and showing kind of a downtrodden emotion overall on the card, it's again balanced. There's duality, and there are more elements of positivity in this card. You know, you see the death of the vine, but as it, you know, traverses its cycle, completes its cycle, there's growth, there's rebirth. Just like the division and the sides, the left and the right, death and life and beauty. The same thing with the hand holding the rose, all just kind of depicting that two-sided nature of life, but still kind of keeping it upbeat with happy colors and earthy colors. So if you like that sort of thing, if you like the idea of the kind of positive, constant element throughout the deck, you will definitely get that from these cards. Overall, I think the deck is really great. I can reiterate that the color, the art, the illustration, the time that it took to kind of come up with these elements still is very worthwhile. And as I said, maybe not the best choice for a beginner, but definitely once you kind of acquire that basis of understanding, I highly recommend, again, the Rider-Waite series. Then this would be a great transitional segue into something a little bit more modern and colorful and happy, and kind of just a different cast. So if you enjoyed this video and this review of the Good Karma Tarot deck, I highly recommend you giving me a like and a thumbs up and possibly subscribing, because I plan on bringing out future videos of reviews of decks that I have incoming right now, even a new indie deck that I have on the way that's very artistic, just absolutely gorgeous work of art that I cannot wait to share, and also some resources for beginners, books that I'm using that have been a wealth of help for me in grasping the concepts and understanding of the Rider-Waite deck, while also utilizing this one for now until I get my traditional decks in the mail. So I plan to make videos and share all of that with you guys. So again, please like and subscribe if you liked the video and if it helped you in some way, so that it can help other people. I hope to see all of you in later videos. Have a fantastic, grateful day, mystical souls. Bye.